The season 20 reunion didn't feel like a normal reality TV sit-down, felt like the end of an era. For years, viewers watched the Brown family argue, defend, and fall apart piece by piece. But this time, the energy was different. Instead of confrontation, Kody Brown walked in with a message no one expected. He wants the pain to end. That statement alone changed the tone of the entire reunion. For over a decade, sister wives told the story of a plural family trying to survive public pressure, legal challenges, and emotional strain. But as the marriages with Christine, Janelle, and Meri ended, the show slowly transformed into something else. A chronicle of separation, heartbreak, and identity loss. By the time the reunion aired, the plural marriage was no longer a reality. It was history. Kody openly admitted that trust had been damaged beyond repair. He acknowledged that once emotional bonds break, rebuilding them is not simple, and sometimes not possible. This was not the confident patriarch viewers once saw. This was someone facing the consequences of years of conflict, distance, and public fallout. The reunion became less about who was right or wrong and more about what was left. Each conversation carried the weight of past arguments, missed chances, and emotional scars. The family was no longer fighting to stay together. They were trying to understand how everything came apart, and that realization hit hardest in the silence between moments, pauses, careful words, the acceptance that things would never go back to how they were. For the first time, the focus shifted away from saving the plural family. Instead, it centered on closure, on letting go, forgiving where possible, and moving forward as separate individuals. Christine had already started a new life. Janelle stood firmly in her independence. Meri had emotionally stepped away. And Kody, now left with only one marriage, was forced to confront a completely different reality. This reunion didn't just recap events. It marked a psychological turning point. It showed the end of one identity and the beginning of another. For Kody, for the women, and for the show itself. The story of Sister Wives is no longer about building a plural marriage. It's about what remains after it collapses. And for viewers, that shift may be the most powerful chapter yet. This wasn't drama, this was accountability. And it changed everything. Season 20 introduced something viewers never expected to see from Kody Brown. A series of personal visits that quickly became known among fans as his apology tour. Through years of tension, emotional distance, and public fallout, Kody made the decision to sit down with each of his former wives one by one and confront the past directly. This wasn't about cameras or dramatic confrontations. It was about acknowledgement. For the first time, Kody appeared less focused on defending his choices and more focused on explaining them. He spoke about regret, miscommunication, and the emotional weight of watching his family structure fall apart. But each conversation unfolded differently, because each relationship had ended in its own unique way. With Janelle, the interaction was calm and grounded. There was no yelling, no dramatic emotion. Instead, there was maturity and distance. Their conversation reflected two people who had accepted reality. Connection that once existed was gone, but respect remained. It was the most stable moment of the entire apology tour. Christine's conversation carried a completely different energy. Her life had already moved forward. She had built a new chapter, a new relationship, and a new sense of independence. When Kody attempted to revisit the past and express regret, it reopened emotional memories that were not easy to revisit. Tension wasn't explosive, it was emotional, layered, and real. It showed how healing doesn't always happen at the same pace for everyone involved. Then came Meri, perhaps the most complicated of all. Their history stretched back decades, and the emotional baggage between them was impossible to ignore. Side voices, friendships, and years of unresolved misunderstandings made their conversation feel heavier. There were moments of honesty, but also moments where it became clear that too much had happened for things to ever return to what they once were. Across all three conversations, one truth stood out. Apologies matter, but they don't erase history. They can open the door to healing. They can reduce anger. They can create understanding. But they cannot undo the emotional distance that builds over years of conflict. The apology tour revealed a version of Kody viewers rarely saw before. Someone reflecting instead of reacting. Someone trying to close emotional chapters instead of controlling them. And while it didn't rebuild relationships, it did something equally important. It acknowledged that the past still matters. These meetings marked a transition from confrontation to acceptance. Not reconciliation, acceptance. The understanding that some relationships evolve, some fade, and some simply end. And for the Brown family, this phase may be the most honest one yet. 4 women, 4 different endings, and 1 man left facing the aftermath. Some relationships faded quietly. Others ended forever. Here's the real dynamic now. After the reunion and the emotional apology tour, one question remained at the center of everything. Where does Kody Brown actually stand with each of the women who once formed his plural family? The answer is complicated, because every relationship ended differently and every connection now exists in a completely new form. Meri. Kody and Meri shared decades of history. She was his first wife, his longest partnership, and for many years the emotional foundation of the family. Today, that relationship looks very different. They are no longer partners in any meaningful sense, but they are not enemies either. There is politeness. There is mutual understanding. There is even a level of respect. But the emotional closeness that once defined their bond has faded. Their interactions now feel more like 2 people who once shared a life but have moved into separate worlds. It's not hostile, it's distant. Janelle. Among all the post-breakup dynamics, Kody's connection with Janelle appears the most stable. Not emotional, not romantic, but stable. Their conversations are grounded, practical, and calm. They communicate when necessary and avoid unnecessary conflict. There's a sense that both have accepted the end of their relationship and are focused on moving forward rather than revisiting the past. It reflects maturity and emotional boundaries. Christine. This is where the distance is most visible. Christine has completely stepped into a new chapter of her life, building independence and happiness outside the plural structure. Her emotional separation from Kody feels final. Not dramatic, final. Any attempt to revisit the past carries tension, not because of anger alone, but because she has already moved forward. The life she is building no longer includes him, and that reality makes reconciliation unlikely. This is not a relationship in transition. It's one that has fully ended. Robyn. Now the only remaining partner in Kody's life, Robyn stands at the center of everything that remains. But this position comes with weight. Their marriage now carries the emotional impact of the entire family collapse. The expectations, the criticism, the pressure, it all sits inside this one relationship. Instead of being one wife among several, Robyn is now part of a completely different dynamic. A single marriage shaped by the aftermath of plural family breakdown. Together, these relationships paint a powerful picture. The Brown family no longer operates as a connected unit. The shared structure that once defined them has dissolved into separate paths, separate homes, and separate identities. They are no longer functioning as a plural marriage. They are individuals who once shared a life, now learning how to live apart. And perhaps the most emotional truth is this. Sometimes families don't explode in one moment. They slowly transform until one day they're no longer the same at all. When Kody said, "I want the hurt to end," it sounded simple, but the emotional weight behind those words was anything but. It wasn't just regret. It was exhaustion. Kind of exhaustion that comes after years of tension, public scrutiny, broken relationships, and constant emotional conflict. For most of the series, Kody was seen as the leader of a plural family, confident, outspoken, and determined to maintain control of a complex household. His identity was deeply tied to that role. He wasn't just a husband. He was the center of a system built on multiple marriages, shared responsibilities, and a lifestyle that set his family apart from the rest of the world. But over time, that identity began to fracture. Public criticism grew louder. Arguments became more visible. Emotional distance between him and his wives slowly widened. The separations didn't happen all at once. They unfolded over years, each one reshaping the family dynamic and, in turn, reshaping Kody himself. By the time of the reunion, the man sitting there wasn't the same one viewers saw in earlier seasons. There was less certainty, less control, more reflection. Losing 3 marriages didn't just change his relationships, it changed his sense of self. The structure that once defined his purpose no longer existed. The daily life, the routines, the shared decision-making, the identity of being the patriarch of a plural family, all of it shifted. and what replaced it was unfamiliar territory. Now, he is navigating a reality where he is no longer balancing multiple relationships, but instead confronting the emotional aftermath of their endings. There's a difference between choosing change and being forced into it. The reunion made it clear that Kody is still processing that difference. His words suggested something deeper than an apology. They reflected acceptance, or at least the beginning of it. Acceptance that the past cannot be rewritten. Acceptance that some relationships won't recover. Acceptance that the role he once held in the family has permanently changed. For someone who spent years trying to hold everything together, this moment marked a shift from control to reflection. The reunion showed a man trying to understand his own story from the outside, not as the leader directing it, but as a participant living through its consequences. Revealed someone who is no longer trying to fix what's broken but trying to make peace with the fact that it broke. And perhaps that's the most emotional reality behind his words. "I want the hurt to end" wasn't just about his ex-wives. It was about himself, about the weight of the past, about the challenge of moving forward after losing a life that once felt permanent. For the first time, viewers saw not the patriarch, not the decision-maker, but a person adjusting to a new identity. One shaped not by control but by acceptance. The biggest outcome from the reunion isn't reconciliation, it's transformation. 4 years, Sister Wives was built around the idea of a plural family navigating life together. Shared homes, shared responsibilities, shared relationships. Core story was always about whether that lifestyle could survive the pressures of modern life, public scrutiny, and emotional complexity. Now that story has changed. The Brown family is no longer defined by plural marriage. Instead, it has become a story about independence, healing, rebuilding identities, and learning how to live after separation. The structure that once held everyone together no longer exists, and each person is now writing their own chapter. Christine, Janelle, and Meri are no longer tied to the expectations of a shared marriage. They are building lives that reflect their individual priorities, their own growth, and their own sense of freedom. Their journeys now focus on rediscovering who they are outside the roles they held for decades. That process isn't instant, and it isn't always easy, but it represents movement and change. At the same time, Kody and Robyn are facing a completely different reality. Their marriage is no longer one part of a larger family system. It now carries the emotional weight of everything that happened before. The breakups, the public reactions, the expectations from viewers, and the pressure of redefining what their relationship looks like moving forward. Instead of balancing multiple relationships, Kody is now navigating one. And that single relationship is shaped by the aftermath of the past. It requires adjustment, reflection, and a new understanding of partnership without the plural dynamic that once defined his role. The future of the Brown family isn't about rebuilding what existed. It's about adapting to what remains. This shift also changes the direction of the show itself. The next chapter of Sister Wives won't revolve around managing a plural household. It will focus on what happens after it breaks apart, the emotional rebuilding, the new beginnings, the independence, and the long process of healing. Viewers are no longer watching a family trying to stay together. They're watching individuals learning how to stand on their own. And that may be the most powerful evolution of the story so far. 'Cause sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin after everything familiar falls away. Not when a family forms, but when each person has to rediscover who they are without it. The Brown family's future isn't about returning to the past. It's about stepping into something completely new.